With the recent development in Ukraine, including the Mirage jet that's going to be supplied to the country, as well as the U.S. aid package and approval to strike inside Russian territory, will this be a pivotal point in Ukraine? Joining us right now to talk more about it is Mr. Mateusz Piątkowski, a PhD from University of Łódź. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning. Thank you for having me back again.
Thank you so much for being here. First of all, can you help us understand how much the Mirage jet, as promised by Macron to Zelensky, can change the situation in the front?
Well, let me begin with the fact that, of course, in the conflict of such magnitude and gravity, the attrition is unavoidable, and Ukrainian military aviation is suffering from attrition. There are operational combat losses, and despite the West try to salvage all available spare parts in order to keep the post-Soviet MiG-29, Su-24 of the Ukrainian Air Forces to fly them as long as possible, they are reaching their technical lifespan. They are reaching their expiration date in terms of technical aspect. So Ukraine already chose F-16 as a major workhorse for the future Ukrainian Air Force, and I believe the Mirage 2000 is going to be some kind of augmentation. Most likely, they are going to replace Su-24 in performing the deep strikes. But of course, Mirage 2000 is a classical, I would say, fourth generation fighter, and it has a lot of capabilities. It is a multi-role aircraft, and in fact, my opinion, that is going to be an addition to the already ordered the F-16 that those aircrafts were promised by the Western allies of Ukraine, Western partners of Ukraine, to be delivered probably somewhere in the second half of this year. And the Mirage are going to be supplementary to this package that is expected to arrive soon.
All right, and we've recently heard President Zelensky said that they were able to thwart Russia's attempt at taking Kharkiv, as well as the city of Vovchansk having successfully pushing out the Russians. That's, of course, opposed to the more grim doom and gloom message that we have heard from months ago. So can you tell us what's the changing point of this war that has kind of shifted in slightly more in Ukrainian favor right now?
Well, it is hard to predict the future, unfortunately, at this point. Well, for instance, if we're talking about the Mirage of F-16s, well, the problem of for instance, the question of the control of the air over Ukraine, it's the question of the air superiority. And it's a very complex issue because the biggest stress for the Ukrainian aviators is not actually the Russian airplanes. Of course, it's one of the many threats. But the biggest issue is the threat of the Russian surface-to-air defense systems. Both actually belligerents have very robust and sophisticated defense network, and actually it is very hazardous for the Ukrainian and also for the Russian, vice versa, to operate safely over Ukraine. So the solution in this context is to either go use some stealth capabilities, and those stealth capabilities are actually now beyond the Ukrainian reach. But another solution is to use the standoff munition, like the Scalp or Storm Shadow mission. Basically, the standoff munition works on the principle, I am firing before I could be tracked and destroyed. And here comes also, I guess, the political issue that the France gave Ukraine green light to strike military targets inside Russia, of course, accordance with the international humanitarian law. So, in my opinion, in this context, I would say that air superiority, whether the Ukrainian aviation would be able to achieve the air superiority is a very complex issue. The history taught us that gaining air superiority is a precondition for the success of the ground operation. Without superiority, you can't expect major successes on the front line.
Right, you just brought up a very important point right there about the political issue side, especially France being one of the countries that first green-lit Ukraine's capability to strike within Russia. Does that fact mean that these these Mirage jets being sent to Ukraine will have that capability also to maybe go inside Russian borders?
Yes, because they are French aircrafts. They are fully compatible with the French cruise missiles, with the French systems, like especially Scalp. So it's kind of a natural choice in this regard. And also we have to remember there have been approximately 600 of them produced. So there is a huge pool of spare parts of the reserve airframes. And also Mirage 2000 is known for its low-cost operation. So it's actually, I would say, a convenient and reasonable choice to use those aircrafts as a supplementary to the F-16. So in this context, yes, I believe also we have to look a little bit beyond maybe even the perspective of this conflict, because in order to stop further Russian aggression in the future, Ukraine needs a strong and robust aviation. And this is what we are seeing now. This is a transition period. This is a transition moment from the ex-Soviet airframes to the Western types. And Mirage is a natural part of this transition alongside the F-16. Whether it's going to significantly impact the battlefield, it is up to seen. I would say the Mirage is somehow on the equal footing with the other Russian fourth generation aircrafts, but I'm not sure whether it's capable of fighting with the latest, especially upgraded Russian aircrafts like Su-35 family. It's all about avionics. It's all about the weaponry. It's all about the pilot skills. The aircraft itself is just a part of the system, and achieving air superiority is much more than only just using the aircraft. It's actually a very, very complex issue. We need to take into account the radar, the electronic warfare as well, which become a very serious issue in this combat. So we will see what will happen. Probably I'm expecting that those deliveries will be somehow visible on the front line, probably at the beginning of the next year.
All right, like you mentioned, there's a whole lot of puzzle pieces in this jigsaw in order to put everything together to achieve a Ukrainian success. And of course, speaking of various moving pieces, I'm also wondering if this precedent will also kind of embolden other Ukrainian allies to be able to make the same call, saying that, well, Ukraine does need all these moving pieces in order to fight back and allow the use of their fighter jets in order to achieve what you mentioned as an aerial superiority.
Of course, but in this process, we have to remember about the operational and logistical challenges. So I kind of wonder that was the main reason why the F-16 was chosen, for instance, over the Gripen, because Swedish offer was not maybe rejected by the Swedish government after consideration, decided that it is not a smart move to supply Ukraine with the Gripens, because actually I believe the F-16 is the most suitable choice. Is actually the aircraft, as I said, with the most multi-role capabilities, and it's also about the logistic. If you have too many types of the aircraft, you're creating a nightmare for the logistic, nightmare for the operational center. So in this context, I would say the best choice is to have the multi-role aircraft. The best choice is to have the aircraft which is affordable in operation as much as it's possible, and of course, to which training transition is the smoothest one. So I believe when you are having a mixture of different airframes, is going to create some issues. So in this context, I think the decision of the Ukrainian government is to make F-16 as a main workhorse of the Ukrainian aviation in the future, and the Mirage as a supplementary role. But I also think that the Ukrainians will also keep flying those ex-post-Soviet airplanes as long as it's possible. So I guess we are going to see in 2025 a variety of different types operating over Ukrainian sky. But as I said before, we need to look a little bit beyond, maybe even beyond this conflict, because in order to deter the future attacks from Russia, we don't know how this conflict ends, but definitely Ukraine needs a future military to be strong. And one of this is an unavoidable process because, as I said at the beginning, those ex-Soviet types of aircrafts already reaching their technical lifespan. They're reaching their date of expiry, and there is no other choice than to transit to the Western types of jets. And I think the F-16 is the most reasonable choice. Just in this context, Ukraine is actually following the example of Poland. Poland has similar issue around almost 20 years ago and decided to choose F-16 actually over the Mirage 2000 and the Gripen at the time, as far as I remember.
Right, and I would like to focus on what you said, looking beyond this conflict right now, and also the fact that air superiority is usually what dictates land superiority. So I would like to draw attention slightly to the recent announcement stating that when it comes to NATO's air defense, we're still lacking when it comes to air defense systems. So can we draw like a parallel in this situation and say that maybe if we want to look beyond this conflict, it is also something eventually NATO has to bolster?
Well, basically, the NATO situation, I would say it's slightly different in this context. That one of the things that the NATO do possess, and Ukraine actually, unfortunately, do not, is the stealth capabilities. Stealth capabilities are one of the solution for suppressing and destroying the enemy air defense. So that's why so many nations, so many countries, especially in the West, are investing in those stealth capabilities. And the prime example is F-45, F-25 Raptor. Those are two aircrafts that are mostly built around their stealth capability. Stealth means that you are invisible. And if you are invisible, you may fire upon your enemy before it could spot you, before it destroys you. So I think that's the path that was taken by the NATO many years ago by the United States Air Force. And what we are seeing already, many NATO countries are ordering those F-45 aircrafts in order to bolster their stealth capabilities. But of course, I fully agree with you. This is much more complex than having only aircraft. Aircraft itself is not a solution. In order to build a strong and robust air defense system, you need to also have those surface-to-air missile systems, those systems like Patriot, which are capable, but not only, because Patriot is like one of the most sophisticated systems, but of course we got to have short-range systems, medium-range systems, long-range systems, and this is what we called to create the anti-air denial zones, that actually the enemy cannot establish the air superiority. So I think that the NATO capabilities are slightly different than the Ukrainians. Ukrainians, unfortunately, cannot get those stealth aircrafts because it's too precious technology to be delivered, to be transferred. There are many restrictions in terms of legal and operational restriction. But itself, the aircraft, as I said, aircraft itself, it's not a magic wand. Aircraft operates in a system, and the system is actually the winning the air superiority.
Right. Thank you so much, sir, for your input and insight. You've been a vast well of knowledge when it comes to this topic. Really appreciate it. Thanks again for being with us on TVP World. Our guest was Mateusz Piątkowski, PhD, University of Łódź. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much.